So I guess before this, I was at U of I, did management and marketing for undergrad, then spent the last year doing a master's at Carnegie Mellon University in product and service innovation, I guess you would call it. So kind of took a little bit of a circuitous route to where I'm going right now. I didn't necessarily fully plan to get into the world of analytics. Like as my first job after graduation, I was more aiming for like product management, sort of in that space. More on obviously the marketing side, not the technical side of product management for like a CPG company or something like that. But I just sort of, this opportunity just kind of came up and I was interested in both sports. And then obviously it's in like a high demand technical area where you're building a lot of relatable skills that could serve me well regardless of where I end up wanting to go. So I figured at this point, given like what we had talked about earlier, sort of the lower opportunity cost of sort of starting out at kind of a lower rung than maybe you would expect potentially with a master's degree, I figured it was a good opportunity to get my foot in the door in an area that may end up being where I want to stay for the long haul.
Yeah. So just going back to, and you know, we chatted earlier, but I guess just going back on what we were talking about, when you say lower opportunity costs, you're talking about the basically taking on a job that may not pay shouldn't say pay, but like not even, you know, may not be as ideal as some other opportunities that you might have, but there's so much in implicit, you know, benefit. Can you talk about, you know, what those types of benefits are?
Yeah, definitely. I think just for me, one, I got like to land a similar role at a different company, like given my skill set at this point, to get like a similar job title and sort of like work opportunity. It wasn't going to be it requires kind of more experience generally for a similar role at a different company. So and it builds like in demand skills and in an industry that I was interested in. So it was really the combination of like getting to, you know, an opportunity to work in sports, which is already kind of rare in itself, but also in an area that, you know, I'm not just picking any job in sports, like it's picking an area that's going to serve me with good skills that I'm leveraging my education in order to, you know, be of service to the company. So.
That makes sense. And I'm curious, you know, what was that, as you said, it's incredibly competitive to get a job with a sports team. So what was that process? How did you differentiate yourself? And what would you recommend for somebody who's trying to get into there? You know, what were some of the organizations that you joined? What were some of the things you did while in those organizations that allowed you to get those opportunities? Can you just talk about that a little bit?
For sure. I think the biggest thing is just, like, at least just in learning about sort of, I guess, like, what they're looking for, as well as, like, what I'm looking for. It's, like, just doing some of those upfront networking conversations as early as you can, just because it really helps you not only learn what they're looking for, but you learn a lot about yourself along the way. Like, one of the biggest things that I learned was... I talked with like he was like a VP of technology for the Cubs. He's since moved on to a different company, but like the biggest thing that stuck out with me from a conversation with him is like what do you want your career to be? Do you want to be like potentially a leader in this space, or do you want to just like work in sports like anybody else sort of? So like, and that can involve having to take, you know, different sort of job titles and working your way in, because he started out like he worked at Accenture and then worked his way in because he decided, you know, he didn't want to just, you know, have the job title of being in sports for the sake of being in sports. He decided like I wanted to be like, you know, a leader, you know, with like different skills that he developed in the sports space, and he kind of backed his way into it instead of just sort of taking the first like sports job that kind of came his way. So
and that's something, it's interesting you say that, because that's something that I think that some people don't realize can happen, is that he was mentioning to you, do you just want to be somebody else who's working in the space, or do you want to be a leader in that space? And in his case, he ended up working at Accenture and then backing into it by leveraging that experience at Accenture, which is a really notable consulting firm, and then using that to get into the sports field, because now it differentiates him, right? Maybe from people who had just started in there or who are coming from other backgrounds. Interestingly enough, let's say that you're somebody who starts in the sports space and then you want to back and use that to back into a different type of industry. It can go both ways, right?
Definitely.
It's not just, you know, leveraging some other experience to get into the space you want to, but maybe you're in a space that you don't actually enjoy as much, but you want to use that to get to the next space.
Because the biggest thing at the end of the day too, and like in these interviews that I had with the Bears for my current position, the biggest thing is about skills. Like that's kind of king anywhere, but especially kind of in that space, the best way to highlight yourself, it's the networking in sports absolutely helps, like 100%, especially for just roles that like they don't do a lot of like external hiring in certain cases for different types of roles. But the biggest thing, at least especially for kind of the job I'm in and like business analytics, the biggest thing they kind of want to see is like, like, do you sort of have an interest in sort of like a consumer face, like understanding the consumer, understanding the fan, because that's sort of what your everyday is in analytics. Like, you're helping sort of the whole organization understand its fans better, helping drive, ROI for, different like teams better, just helping, to obviously drive the bottom line through understanding the customer. So showing that you have experience doing that through school projects or internships or what have you, that's really the I think the thing that helped me the most in getting to where I currently am.
Got it. So that's how you were able to get to the point where
it
you
doesn't
actually
have
had
to
the
be sports
opportunity to
specific. It was really about like the skills and sort of selling the like that I'm very interested in understanding the consumer and sort of in that angle really, I think, really worked in my favor.